Part of the rebuilding process on the Gulf Coast will be the natural reintroduction of bird life. Pelicans, least terns, and skimmers fled in anticipation of the storm. But songbirds remained ashore and were severely impacted by the devastating effects of the hurricane. Well, gradually, coastal birds are returning to their nesting grounds. But as MPB's Patrick Smith tells us, some species of birds may have a more difficult time of reestablishing pre-Katrina population numbers.
With thousands of deaths, countless structures demolished, and millions of people displaced, Hurricane Katrina was the most devastating natural disaster to ever hit our country. Almost a year after the storm rolled across Mississippi's Gulf Coast, recovery efforts are just getting underway and will continue undoubtedly for decades to come. So if it was that bad on Mississippi's human inhabitants, imagine the plight of the smaller animals that live along Mississippi's coastal plain, especially the birds.
I think we should remember that Hurricane Katrina set some precedents that we just didn't know of before. So judging what happened, what the birds did, is very difficult. I can say this, that it had major effects on our bird populations, especially the birds we call permanent residents. Oh, sort of like neighborhood birds, mockingbirds, blue jays, woodpeckers, chickadees, cardinals, the types of birds that we see most frequently in our yards. In other words, birds that really live in a very small community, a very small part of the coast.
One of our most fragile neighbors is well known to anyone who's ever driven Highway 90. Nesting areas for the least tern in the sand beaches of Biloxi and Gulfport are well known to travelers and residents alike. Now, surprisingly, the tern and his cousin the skimmer fared very well during Hurricane Katrina because, simply put, they were smart enough to get the heck out of Dodge.
I would say that the majority, probably the greatest percentage of our least terns had left this area in the weeks prior to Katrina, because that's what they usually do. They come, they nest, and just depart with their young sometime during August.
Harrison County has committed itself to reestablishing the terns' nesting areas devastated by Katrina. While the terns concentrate in these selected areas, larger birds like the brown pelican, cranes, eagles, and seagulls are spread across the entire width of the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
The eagles that nest here in Mississippi nest in the winter. They begin, say, in early December. The young fledge in March, and generally by June or July, they're flying somewhere across the great USA. Ospreys, from what I've seen since the storm, seem to be doing well. I've seen a good number of them. I think if mortality occurred, it would be more likely among immature birds as opposed to adults. Adults have just a little more savvy, a little more experience. So I really don't think that ospreys or brown pelicans or eagles were affected to the extremes that smaller birds were. Of course, many of them just plain don't make it. They get bashed by the wind or drowned or something falls on them or nearby. So that mortality, we can't escape the fact that mortality was very high, probably higher than it's ever been, bird-wise, in any other storm.
While Katrina is viewed as a landmark in our nation's history, it is simply one of the many bumps in the road that make up our natural world. We will recover from the storm, and so will the animals that share our lands and waters with us. It may take a little longer this time, but a full recovery, is a definite given.